John Newton grew up in a seafaring family. His father was a seafarer. He was a seafarer from being a young boy, and he became involved eventually in slave trading. He then was captain of a slave ship out of Liverpool. And remember, by the mid-18th century, 1 African in 5 is crossing the Atlantic in a ship out of Liverpool. So this is the man who wrote Amazing Grace. And the curiosity, the kind of perplexing problem is, how do you explain a man that's steeped in the violence of Atlantic slavery becoming a hymn writer, becoming a vicar of an English church? That's the first curiosity about this particular hymn. I still scratch my head about this problem. Christianity didn't turn against slavery until really quite late in the 18th century. There are Christian voices against it, there's no doubt about that. But they're a minority, they're not heeded. The great bulk, the great swathes of the Christian world didn't think of slavery as something that is wrong. Well, that was true of other religions as well. I mean, slavery had gone unquestioned, unchallenged since time out of mind, not just in the Atlantic. Wherever you turn in recorded history, slavery is a fact of life, and contemporary faith didn't really challenge it, whether it was Islam or whether it was Christianity. And Christians don't see this as something as a problem. You can dip into the Bible, for instance, to find any number of examples of slavery discussed, slavery accepted. And indeed, when the American Civil War comes along, there are clerics throughout the American South dipping into the Bible to find quotes to justify enslavement and slavery. But in this particular case with Newton, one illustration of this, he docks in at Sandy Point in St. Kitts with a cargo of slaves which he sells. And he docks next to a man called Alexander Clooney, who's a captain out of London. And for a number of nights, these two men, who are both quite devout, sit on the deck and talk about theology and discuss, how do you secure grace? How do you get to heaven? And they're talking about this night after night as good Christian men and really quite learned theologians, whilst the stink of the slave decks is in their nostrils. They see nothing odd about this godless world that they work and live in and their faith. To us, it's bizarre. To them, it was unquestioned, unchallenged, normal.